Let's take a look at this tweet on the Terra Luna side. So this tweet aged well. In March, Do Kwon, creator of failed stablecoin UST and layer 1 blockchain Terra, tweeting, "By my hand, DAI will die." DAI being a decentralized, yeah, DAI being a decentralized stablecoin competitor from MakerDAO. Now, joining us now to discuss is Rune Christensen, who is the founder of MakerDAO. Welcome to the show, Rune. Thanks for joining us. So perhaps you could tell our viewers to start off things. What is the difference between MakerDAO's DAI stablecoin as well as Terra's stablecoin UST?
Yeah, the big difference between a stablecoin like DAI and an algorithmic stablecoin like Terra is that DAI is fully collateral backed. So while stablecoins like Terra basically have this ability to completely collapse and sort of go to zero, collateral backed stablecoins can't do that because they basically have real assets, protecting their value. And DAI was engineered like that from the beginning because it's so obvious that if you're trying to create something as stable, you kind of want to focus on the worst case scenario, right? You want to focus on bear markets and crashes and tough liquidity conditions. And it's just, it's obvious then that you need a lot of valuable hard assets to really maintain confidence and also simply allow people to exit the stablecoin if they want to.
Right. So from my understanding, DAI is an collateralized stablecoin, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean,
okay.
It also has directly.
Okay.
It also has directly redeemable USDC as collateral. So it sort of is both, directly backed with USDC and the US dollar, but also over collateralized with Ethereum.
Right. There's a meme going around that I wanted to bring up, and it basically shows that tweet I just mentioned by Do Kwon. And in the end, DAI is left standing compared to Do Kwon's UST stablecoin. So I wonder, why was there this rivalry between DAI and UST? And what did you think of this meme when you saw it?
So the history of stablecoins sort of is that really this algorithmic model that UST followed was actually well known all the way back in 2015 when DAI was sort of started. The Maker project began, and we designed the DAI stablecoin. Back then it was described as senior shares, but the model was basically the same. And the thing is, all the way back then, it was completely clear and sort of common knowledge that this model just didn't work, basically. So we only really saw them, like nobody ever did it because it didn't make sense. And then this current market found, and we started seeing these types of coins as sort of almost like Ponzi schemes, right? Like the types of coins you launch in a bull market, get a bunch of people to buy it and make the price go up. And what ended up happening was that Terra became this, very large version of these, algorithmic Ponzi's, as some would call them. And eventually, what happened is that there were a lot of their community that would basically sort of attack DAI and tweet about DAI, and in particular focus on the fact that DAI was backed by USDC, which is sort of seen as a compromise on decentralization, right? Because it wasn't purely Ethereum. And then eventually, I actually got fed up with all of the tweets, sort of bad-mouthing DAI, when we were really just trying to create stability. And I basically started reminding people, look, this model doesn't work. It's going to zero. It's sort of common knowledge. And then I think that sort of triggered a kind of, that's what ended up leading Do Kwon to sort of directly talk about DAI, ultimately because I got fed up with his community.
So if we step back a bit and we look at what ultimately was the big problem with UST, was that what was backing it was a volatile asset, so to speak, and that was Luna. When UST collapsed and Luna collapsed, there was also a run on USDT because there was a view that its asset base was in fact illiquid, volatile, etc. Does this give a warning, since your asset base also includes Ethereum as part of the over-collateralization, as you were talking about, does it give a warning that stablecoins have a problem if they're backed by volatile assets? You mentioned you have USDC, and that's sort of considered the stable asset, and one hopes that their asset base, in fact, is truly, as they purport to be, very liquid in the sense of and very, equivalent, cash equivalent is actually there. Do you think this run should be a red flag to all stable coins, algorithmic, collateral, etc., that having volatile assets as part of the backing is a problem?
So DAI was actually launched right at the top of the the 2017 bubble, and so it launched when Ethereum was around 1,300. And back then, when it was first launched, the only collateral for DAI was Ethereum. So it was purely collateralized with ETH. And it then basically rode the crash all the way from 1,300 all the way down to like $80 per ETH for something like a 95% drop over 6 months or so. And it worked completely flawlessly. Like there was not even a moment where it was even close to being at risk, because it's simply, what happens is basically as the stablecoin needs to contract the stablecoin supply, because the value of the collateral falls, it will simply liquidate the collateral on the decentralized exchanges and sort of the high, the highly liquid markets that exist for a major cryptocurrency like ETH. So DAI has already been completely battle tested in that regard. And I actually really think that the issue with USDT is not really that people are worried about liquidity of the underlying assets so much. It's really that people aren't even sure if there really are any collateral assets, right? Or if it's just on paper. And I think that's the huge advantage that, crypto and blockchain, they bring to the table, right? Is that with Maker, nobody needs to sort of trust anybody whether or not the assets are there. You can simply go to daistats.com and you will see a live view, like sort of a live real-time audit. You can simply check for yourself that all the collateral is there, right? There's all the assets necessary to contract the DAI supply all the way down to zero.
Honestly, do you think that USDT is not telling the truth with regards to its assets?
I actually think it's probably sound. I mean, I think that they're doing some kind of audit. I think there was something released in December, if I'm not mistaken. And
I think.
I think people are not. I mean, people think it. Yeah, like it's maybe not. Yeah, it's not an audit. Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, there's some concerns about the fact that they're not going all the way. I think. I mean, it's hard to explain. Hard to say exactly why. But I think there's a reasonable chance that it is completely sound. All the collateral is there, but for some kind of regulatory, they're sort of worried about regulation or something like that. They're not willing to provide full transparency, and I think that's sort of what the market in general is betting, in that it continues to to consider Tether sort of the biggest stablecoin, right? Even now, though, we're seeing that flow kind of from Tether to USDC, which I fully support. I mean, I definitely think the USDC is sort of the kind of safe and simple stablecoin of choice if you have no specific sort of reason to pick something else, and you're not cool enough to use something decentralized like DAI, then I think USDC is a good choice.
Rune, just a couple of questions, sort of forward-looking questions. So the first one, just specifically looking at the UST situation, there's now a proposal to basically fork the Terra blockchain and kind of, try a different approach. And I guess my question is, what do you think about this proposal? And just more generally, like, do you find it interesting that the community still wants to kind of, I don't know, revive this or move forward? I'm just curious what your take is.
Yeah, so I think some people, have the take that it's sort of Stockholm syndrome, or even it's sort of, desperate attempt to just, get some kind of value out of it, right? But really, what everybody wants is they wish they never got into Terra in the first place, and their heart may not be in it anymore. But I choose to believe that this does also show some kind of, inherent resilience and value of decentralized communities, right? That really proves a sort of, even if it was basically a big Ponzi scheme, essentially, the people and the community that were subject to this, they have created some kind of community bond, and intangible value that goes beyond just the economics of the system. I think, though, there's a risk it's not really going to work, because I think what's happening now is a kind of political fracturing where they simply can't agree on like who should get how much. In my opinion, like the obvious answer is that all of the value should go to the UST holders, because there's basically no chance they're going to be made whole. And then the logic of sort of what do you call it, a senior credit, a sort of like how you want to protect sort of the depositors or the savers, right? Like the regular people that are just trying to save their money, they should always be protected first. They should always get the value first. And so that's my view, basically, that no matter what the community attempts to do, the main objective should be to just try to sort of create value and reimburse UST holders as much as possible.
Yeah, you sort of bring up the pros and cons of decentralization. One is that you do have this kind of community. The other is that the community can't really agree.